I think we're on Facebook Live. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. My name is David McGee, and thank you for joining us on Coffee with Enlace again. And we have with us Ron Bueno. Say hi, Ron.
Hello.
And for those of you who don't know, Ron Bueno is the co-founder and executive director of Enlace. He founded Enlace back in '93. Been a lot of years now working with Enlace. And we have also with us Gersón de León. ¿Se puede saludar?
Hola, hola, un gusto.
And Gersón de León is actually the director of operations for our work going on in Guatemala. For those of you that know, we've now been working in Guatemala for 3 to 4 years. And it's really an outreach of Enlace El Salvador that's helping to oversee the work that's happening in Guatemala and get that up and running. So we're really stoked to have Gersón with us. And I'm going to kind of be doing the interviewing here, and Ron's going to keep us up to date and by translating for Gersón, and then also adding stuff in as well as you wish, Ronaldo. So Gersón, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, about your family and whatnot, and what your role is at Enlace.
Gersón, tal vez pudieras empezar. Queremos empezar la entrevista, tal vez conociéndote un poco más. Tal vez nos pudieras decir un poco sobre tu familia y tu rol en Enlace.
Bueno, para todos un gusto estar acá compartiendo. Mi nombre es Gersón de León. Soy de El Salvador.
It's a real pleasure to be with you. My name is Gersón. I'm from El Salvador.
Y para mí es una alegría también estar en Enlace. Recién el 9 de abril cumplí 7 años de estar acá en Enlace.
It's a real pleasure to work with Enlace. I've been working with Enlace in April. I will have been with Enlace for 7 years.
Estoy casado y desde hace 9 años y tengo un niño de 7 años.
I've been married for 9 years and I have a 7-year-old boy.
Y a mí siempre me ha apasionado mucho el hecho de estar trabajando con iglesias. De hecho, con iglesias y comunidades tengo 15 años de estar trabajando.
And it's always been a passion of mine, a real interest of mine to work with churches and their communities. In fact, I've been doing that for 15 years.
Y mi primera experiencia en Enlace fue en el occidente de El Salvador, en Santa Ana. Ahí estuve trabajando durante 6 años y medio.
My first group of churches that I worked with was in the northwest of the country, in the Santa Ana area. I worked there for 6 years.
Y desde el 2018 estuve entre Santa Ana y viajando a Guatemala.
And in 2018, I started both working in Santa Ana, but also started to travel and to support the churches that were just starting in Guatemala.
Y este año, el 2020, ya directamente solo me estoy dedicando al trabajo con las iglesias en Guatemala.
And as of January of 2020, I'm only focusing on supporting the churches we're working with in Guatemala.
Así que aquí estamos para que puedan también conocer un poco más del trabajo que estamos haciendo en Guatemala.
So I'm here, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share a little bit about what the churches are doing in Guatemala.
Awesome. Yeah, and as any of you who tuned in last Tuesday, Ron was sharing a lot about how we have had to, during this COVID-19 crisis, have had to kind of pivot and shift where the focus has been, because as most of you know, we typically work with churches and communities, church leadership working with their communities to identify projects, and most of those projects and initiatives are usually projects that are implemented over the long haul, strategically focused on reducing multidimensional poverty for these families in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nepal. And so there's been a big shift and a pivot in recent months, in this past few weeks even. And so we're kind of just now into this process. And I know Gersón and Ron were in a tactical meeting yesterday for 5 hours with the rest of the tactical team. How many people are on that team, Ron?
There's 8 of us.
On a tactical team right now that are figuring out the next steps of how we can now take this pivot and be accompanying pastors and church leaders as they begin to identify the neediest families in the community. And so maybe you and Gersón, or you can ask Gersón about that process of family identification to, and what are the next steps basically for Enlace to be able to accompany these pastors and church leaders?
Gerson, tal vez nos pudieras explicar un poco sobre los primeros pasos que se han estado tomando como enlace para apoyar a la iglesia y a la comunidad, identificar a las familias más vulnerables. ¿Cuáles han sido esos pasos? ¿Cuáles han sido los resultados que se están viendo de esos primeros intentos?
Claro, quizás para comenzar, las iglesias en Guatemala, actualmente tenemos 10 trabajando. Estamos casi que en todo el país, 10 iglesias. Y la mayoría no ha dejado de actuar en cuanto a desde que comenzó toda la etapa de la cuarentena.
So we are currently working with 10 churches that are actively engaged with their communities already in Guatemala. And since the very beginning of this crisis, those churches have not stopped working with their community leaders to try to provide some care, help identify the families in grace need, but also provide some care.
La mayoría de nuestras iglesias son de contextos bastante urbanos. Y es ahí donde ahora hay mucha necesidad, ya que la mayoría de casos vulnerables son de gente que es empleada en una fábrica o gente que tiene negocios o trabajos informales.
The majority of the churches we work with are in urban or semi-urban areas, and the families have been heavily impacted. They either have lost their jobs or have been furloughed from their jobs in factories, or they work in the informal sector. And so their micro enterprises, their small businesses aren't operating. They can't sell right now. And so they've been left without income now for 5-6 weeks in many cases.
El gobierno en Guatemala, a través de las diferentes municipalidades, ha estado entregando ciertas ayudas a las familias. Sin embargo, lo ha hecho fuera de los COCODES, que son los organismos o las asociaciones comunitarias. Más que todo, se desconoce un poco la forma de cómo seleccionaron a las familias.
So the Guatemalan government has mounted a huge effort to provide food supplies to many of these neighborhoods, but they're bypassing the community and church leaders. And so it's unknown how they're identifying these families and how they're actually providing the food to the families they're getting. In fact, there's already news that they're kind of spreading it out evenly and leaving huge pockets of people that are the most vulnerable without any support.
Sin embargo, ahora hay algo muy interesante que está pasando. Y es que nuestras iglesias, la mayoría de ellas, unas 5 o 6 de las iglesias que estamos atendiendo, están justamente en el proceso de identificación de necesidades en la comunidad. Sin embargo, ahora que estamos en esta época de pandemia, esa relación se está fortaleciendo aún más. Y sabiendo que los gobiernos no han buscado a los COCODES para acercarse, ahora las iglesias con los COCODES están haciendo esa labor de unirse, de planificar para identificar las familias.
But all of our churches had already been working with their community leaders to start doing diagnostics, to really understand what were the needs that existed or what were the opportunities that exist in each community before the pandemic, before the crisis began. So now that this crisis has happened, it's just sped up that process where church community leaders are working together now to really identify those families that are in need, but also which ones have received some benefit from the government or not, and which ones are falling through the cracks.
Wow, that's incredible to hear. I'm sorry, just to jump in as well, because I didn't really catch that before when I had been hearing about the work in Guatemala so far during this period. But the concept of, it's always the local church that works with their community association. In El Salvador, some of you even learned the word ADESCO, right? Which is this community associations, like a village council of sorts. It's usually that church and community work together, that there's community leaders. And then typically you've got the mayor's office. So when you have government funds, always go through that ADESCO, right? Always go through that community association out into the community. But so in Guatemala, you're saying that the mayor's office, all of the help that they're providing is just kind of bypassing that community association, and they're not even identifying the families, right? I mean, that's what the situation is.
Right. So, and maybe just to add a little bit of what we've been talking about, in Guatemala, they have a curfew till 4 p.m. So after 4 p.m., then the military, the armed forces are coming in with these big trucks of food to distribute. But the community leaders are taking pictures of food going to families that live in, 2-story houses with cars, and they're just doing it, kind of just spreading it out equally and not really going into the most marginalized, into those areas that are hard to get to, which is usually where these families are at. So that's what the church and the community are really, they're trying to do two things in Guatemala, sorry. They're trying to get the government to listen to the Adescos and to work with the Adescos or the Cocodes so that they can respond to these families, but then also trying to fill the gaps where, identifying the families that aren't getting anything and trying to respond to them.
That's incredible. Yeah, and also just the, again, like I've always thought of Enlace's process of church working with community to identify long-term, solutions to poverty. But what Gersón's saying is that, in this relief setting, it's actually strengthening that relationship between the church and community, because that's the stage that these churches are in. They're in, they went from like the intro stages, and now that they're at a stage where they were already interviewing community leaders, and now this is actually strengthening and reinforcing that process. That's interesting. Yeah,
that's correct.
Gersón, sorry, perdón que estamos hablando tanto en inglés, but sorry we're talking so much in English, but this is really exciting. Gersón, maybe you can show us, Gersón sent me a few pictures here on a little slideshow, and we're going to see if we can switch over to it, and Gersón can kind of describe to us some of these pictures that are happening from Guatemala.
Gersón, en esta oportunidad vamos a tratar de poner las fotos que nos has enviado para que tal vez tú nos puedas ir explicando foto por foto o pantalla por pantalla lo que estamos viendo, por favor.
Claro que sí. Aquí hemos tratado de resumir un poco el trabajo de las iglesias, las comunidades en Guatemala. Esta primera imagen es, más que todo, me llama la atención porque las iglesias, para coordinar un poco cómo van a atender a las familias, hicieron esto, poner un cartel ahí en los portones.
So what we want to do is just briefly give you an overview of what some of the churches have been doing to give you an idea that these churches are already in action, already trying to figure out what the next steps are as they care for families. And this is one example. This is in an urban area where they were obviously encouraging people not to leave their houses. So what the churches did is start putting signs up everywhere with the number of the pastor or the church leader so that they could call and let them know what their situation is.
Right. That's interesting. It says there that quédate en casa up in the upper left-hand corner. It says stay at home, but if you need help, call this number.
So that's one of the ways that the churches have been they've been working with community associations and the church leaders by calling them. We've also created these WhatsApp interview schedules, those little like questionnaires that they're sending out to families too, so that families can actually identify those that are in greatest need, and then all that's flowing back to us. And lastly, we could talk more about that too. But they're trying all kinds of different ways to be able to identify these families in a safe way, but also so that we're not missing families that are in greatest need while trying to care for all of them. Relief is as much of art as it is a science, but in our case, we know funds are limited, so we're really trying to get to those families that are in greatest need.
Acá tenemos como un consolidado de datos a la fecha de familias que han podido ser atendidas. Esto lo recopilamos de todas nuestras iglesias en las 4 zonas: el occidente, el sur, en el centro, en la capital y en el oriente. Tenemos 580 familias, un promedio de 2.320 personas. Y ahí pueden observar el monto más o menos de lo invertido, atendiendo a estas familias.
So you can see here, Guatemala, once again, is different than El Salvador. El Salvador, there's a lot tighter restrictions. In Guatemala, they haven't been able to go out before 4 p.m. And so the pastors have already been caring for about 580 families in 4 different areas of the country. That includes the San Marcos region up by the Mexico border, in the central area, the capital area, and then in what would be the southwest area of the country. About 2,320 people have been benefited, and then you can see the amount that's been invested, all from local funds so far.
En esta imagen podemos ver una de nuestras iglesias en la ciudad. Iglesia se llama ICC, es Iglesia Comunidad Cristiana. Acá algo que me impacta es que la iglesia junto con el COCODE, que es la organización comunitaria, han fortalecido su relación y ahora tienen ya una atención bien formal para familias altamente vulnerables. Y aquí podemos ver cómo se preparan con los donativos para ser entregados.
So this picture is actually of a church that we're working with called ICC. And in the picture, you can actually see church leaders and community leaders working together who have already identified these families, but are also packing the food together and that are working together to distribute it. In fact, in the next picture, Dave, that you forwarded there, you can see they've even created a little temporary logo as a church and community to say this is all coming from the church and community together. It's not just the church giving food. It's not just the community giving food from other sources, but rather we're doing this as a body together, as a community together. And they've even created a new name, the UPVH, which is stands for United for Parados de Villahermosa, which is the name of the community. So United for the name of their community.
Yeah, and saying supporting our vulnerable families on the bottom. That's incredible.
Sí, ahí pueden ver el logo y también están en redes sociales, por si los quieren buscar, ahí tienen toda la información. Esta imagen es una convocatoria de la Municipalidad de San Miguel Petapa, donde convoca a COCODES, y ahí participaron hermanos de nuestras iglesias socias en esa región, y están participando porque, vale mencionarlo, que hay muchas familias que se han quedado fuera de las ayudas de gobierno, y a través de este esfuerzo de COCODES, y ahí están nuestras iglesias también, van a hacer una identificación de familias que han quedado fuera de esas ayudas, familias muy vulnerables. Y aquí es una convocatoria donde les están diciendo cómo va a ser el proceso.
So in this picture here, this is actually a meeting that was hosted by the mayor's office, the local mayor's office in one of the regions that we work in. And in that meeting are leaders of the communities, but also our pastors and church members are in this meeting right now. And the primary purpose of the meeting was to see if they could work with the mayor's office to identify those families so that they're not kind of passing over the communities and providing, to whoever is there, or just kind of in some random sequence, but rather the community leaders, and which in Guatemala, they're called COCODES, not ANESCOs, and the pastors we're working with are actually meeting there specifically with the purpose to say, can we be a part of identifying these families? Can we help you validate your lists? Can we make sure we're including families that we know are vulnerable, and do it in a very technical way? In other words, we've got a 10-question scale that prioritizes who's most vulnerable. And the idea is that we run through the scale and can make lists of 1 to 50, 1 to 100 in order priority, and that can match with what the mayor's lists are saying.
Mm-hmm. En esta última imagen podemos ver ya algunos de los que han sido capacitados y conocen el proceso y ahora se están acercando a familias que podrían entrar en esos listados de familias que pueden ser beneficiados. También mencionar que otras de nuestras iglesias en otras zonas están practicando encuestas digitales a través de plataformas digitales, las están enviando por WhatsApp y recopilan información de algunas familias.
So here you have a picture of how we're trying to now verify those lists. So on a community list, there could be 250 families that come up. And so the idea is to really see which of the families have not received any support, and which ones are in greater need because they've got elderly, or they've got single moms with little kids, or they just lost their job, or they're chronically underemployed. And so in this picture, you're seeing a church leader with a police, a woman, and Enlace is training the churches how to go and verify these families in a safe way. So you can see they're trying to maintain social distancing, and they're working with the state entities so that it's done transparently and formally so that we can really identify those families. In other places, they're using other techniques, which goes back to this survey technique that we've been developing through WhatsApp, that are these 10-question interviews that the pastors and community leaders and church leaders are actually sending out to these families, and either have them fill them out, or they call them on the phone and then they fill it out for them and submit it. So that we're really trying to do our due diligence in figuring out which families are the most vulnerable and are in greatest need.
That's incredible. Yeah. And so maybe Gersón, tell us a little bit about what this has been like, for you as a church coach, and how you and other church coaches and other staff of Enlace have really had to stay at home. And really, I mean, from what I understand, the restrictions are, extreme in El Salvador. But so how are you guys handling this? And then how are you actually able to continue communication and with the pastors and church leaders.
Gerson, tal vez nos pudieras explicar cómo han mantenido el trabajo, la relación, la conexión con los pastores y líderes estando en casa. Sabemos que tú vivís en una comunidad bastante restrictiva en el cual no puedes salir. ¿Cómo han hecho ustedes para mantener esa relación, ese contacto y seguir el trabajo?
Bueno, en lo personal sí ha sido muy complicado. Incluso creo que acá en El Salvador hay muchas más restricciones que en Guatemala. En Guatemala han implementado un toque de queda, que es muy diferente. Hay gente que anda afuera y hasta las 4 de la tarde y vuelven a su hogar. En cambio, en El Salvador creo que la restricción ha sido un poco mayor. Sin embargo, hemos mantenido mucha cercanía, ya que cada facilitador, hay 3 facilitadores, han estado a través de plataformas digitales con los pastores y con líderes. Y aparte de eso, también en el caso mío, con los facilitadores, teniendo reuniones semanales para poder planificar.
For us in El Salvador, it's been a little more difficult. It's the restrictions are tighter on us than they are for the team in Guatemala. So it's really been hard for us to even mobilize and get out of our house just for food or for anything else. But we've been able to really maintain the relationship with our church coaches. We have 3 trained church coaches in Guatemala who are daily calling pastors and trying to connect with them through WhatsApp or telephone or other media platforms. I'm also meeting with them weekly as a leader and brainstorming on how we can meet together and do our work effectively. We're also doing public forums now, our own Facebook live shows, but in Guatemala, to try to create experiences and interchange the pastors and find new ways of connecting with them while we can't be there in presence.
También me ha gustado mucho que los compañeros han, de alguna manera, sido muy intencionales en conectar a los pastores de nuestras iglesias en Guatemala a través de foros donde se ha dado una atención, por ejemplo, en salud mental, en cuidado espiritual, en prevenciones de salud ante el coronavirus. Entonces, ha habido esa buena relación, esa buena comunicación y nos hemos cuidado mucho también del hecho de no salir, porque no se puede en Guatemala salir, estar en contacto con personas y si se hace, pues con una cantidad mínima de personas.
The church coaches of Guatemala have been extremely creative in thinking through how not only to stay connected to their pastors, but also providing services to them. They're linking them to workshops on mental health. They're linking them to other speakers that are talking about leadership in times of crisis, or they're really looking for all kinds of resources. Now, not every pastor can access those the same way, especially if it's in the remote rural areas versus the urban, but they're just trying to find really creative ways to stay engaged and to keep providing resources and service to them until we can go out and actually, move into the communities more directly like we have before.
That's incredible. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Gersón. And thank you for the work that you're doing. At Enlace, we often talk about our heroes being the pastors and church leaders and the work that they're doing on an ongoing basis. But also, for me, it's just incredible to see the staff that have come to be a part of Enlace over the years at every level, from all the field staff, the church coaches, technical staff, to people who are working in admin and fundraising and connecting with teams, etc. God has really just brought together an incredible team. But Gersón, I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing, continuing to organize in the midst of all of this, and even with another child on the way, and the difficulty that can bring during this time. So please know that I'll be praying for you. We'll be praying for you as you continue to move forward in these weeks ahead.
Muchas gracias, Gersón, por todo tu esfuerzo, tu trabajo. Es un placer conocerte, pero también contar con tu presencia, tu esfuerzo en el equipo. Y sabemos que en este tiempo difícil, en que no solo personalmente tenés a tu hijo y ahora uno por nacer, una situación bastante difícil, pero también el hecho de tratar de seguir coordinando un esfuerzo de casa y de ver el gran esfuerzo que están haciendo tanto tu persona como los asesores allá en Guatemala es increíble. Vamos a estar orando por ti, por tu familia y por el esfuerzo que están haciendo.
Gracias, también para mí una alegría y estamos planificando tener muchos más encuentros, foros, porque no sabemos cuánto tiempo más vamos a estar en confinamiento. Sin embargo, estamos ya planificando para estar cerca de la pastoral, que yo creo que es bien necesario también, para sentirnos, aunque estamos en casa, pero sentirnos un poco cerca y apoyados unos con otros. Así que gracias.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have been on the show. And if you will just continue to remember us in prayer as we, from home, are trying to stay connected to our pastors and to continue to serve them in the best way possible through forums and other means that we're trying to implement over these days. So thank you.
That's awesome.
Gracias.
Ron, you have anything else you want to add before we close in prayer?
No, I just think it's one of the things that's truly amazing about this crisis is that it is global, that it is affecting, entire communities, entire countries, entire regions of the world. And obviously today we featured Guatemala specifically, but and in every country it's being experienced so differently. And the restrictions are so different. So as Enlace tried to kind of pivot everything around to help these pastors connect to their communities, we can see in Guatemala, those relationships are just speeding up and just working so effectively. And they're able to start really handing food out and caring and providing different kind of services than they can even in El Salvador at this point, where everybody is kind of waiting to get out and get ready to do that. So in El Salvador, it's very different. You're literally one pastor can only go out by themselves to care for one family at a time. So when we're distributing food for 15, 20 families in El Salvador, that means that 15 members of the church or 7 members of the church and 7 members of the community, you can't go together by law, can go and distribute to one family at a time. So it's just, it's really inspiring to me to watch pastors and community leaders figure out creative ways to identify these families and provide, because obviously a lot of these families we know have 5-6 days of food left. We can't sit around and create this master plan. We can't wait for the government to even open up fully. They've got to respond now. And so to me, it's just inspiring to see these pastors and leaders find creative ways, safe ways that are not exposing their members or community leaders or serving as potential points of infection or vectors of infection, doing it safely in a dignified way, but just such creative ways. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm, once again, blown away every time I talk to Gersón and Noé and Eva and everybody on the ground and Tina and Nepal, just to hear about how creative these pastors are responding with enormous sacrifice and passion and care, and how they're working with community leaders to make sure that the lists are correct and that the resources getting to these families. It's inspiring. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it is, it's just so incredible to see pastors and church leaders that, this is their passion. That's what it means to be a Christian, right? To them is to be serving their community and transforming their community. So there's like no doubt in your mind that they are ready and working already, and so, the whole role of that we have as Enlace, the privilege we have is just to walk alongside of them. So, and then we also get the opportunity to be able to walk alongside of you as donors and partners in the U.S. And so we appreciate you guys tuning into this. And I would also ask that you please give us some feedback on this, other things that you would like to see us cover, things that you'd like to see us talk about, people that you'd like to hear from. Our goal is to try and keep you updated on what's happening on the ground through engaging staff members as much as we can every week. And then also to hear from partners and what they're doing in the United States and other parts of the world as well. So yeah, please let us know what you think about this, the Coffee with Enlace. And for those of you who join the coffee program as well, the Enlace Coffee program, let us know what you think about the coffee, because I'm pretty stoked about it. I just made some more with my new AeroPress. And yeah, Gersón's a bit of a coffee aficionado also. And how do you ask somebody what their favorite form of making coffee is?
¿Cuál es tu forma favorita de hacer café? ¿Cuál es la metodología favorita?
Bueno, yo prefiero la Chemex. A mí me gusta mucho el Chemex. Con un café Pacamara, es excelente.
So he likes Pacamara coffee and with the Chemex technique, which is kind of more of an extended drip system, right, Dave? The Chemex?
Yeah, basically it's like it's a pour over type of a style with the, I don't know why it's so unique, but it is unique and it has its own unique flavor as well. They all kind of bring out a little bit different flavor from the coffee, but I was pretty impressed with what the AeroPress was able to do. And he mentioned the Pacamara beans, which are the ones that are kind of most famous of specialty beans from El Salvador. And that's on the list for sure as part of the Enlace coffee roast. We want to get the Pacamara beans at some point and get those roasted. And so, Light Bright Coffee is going to be doing another special roast just for Enlace here the first week or two of May. So that next shipment will be going out in mid-May for coffee. So,
and Dave, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I didn't realize until you said this the other day, and I kind of overheard it, that he is literally roasting it days before it's sent out on purpose, right? So that's why we're only doing it once a month. He literally roasts it literally days, so it's as fresh as you're going to get a specialty coffee delivered to your house, which I didn't even realize. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's incredible. We talked about it, and he was on the show being such a coffee nerd, and he is, and it's great. It means it's great coffee. But you'll see, like, even on the coffee, it has obviously the roast date on it, but it's always going to be, basically within 10 days of when it's at your house. And he thinks that specialty grade coffee, you should be able to use it within 3 to 4 weeks of when it's roasted and to ideally get all the best taste out of it. But so anyhow, but thank you guys for being a part of that and for being a part of all of this. And, it's such a crazy time that we're living in. And I think more than ever, we need to be connected. We need to be united. And as a church around the globe, being able to respond to those families in need, both locally and globally, but it's always the church reaching out in their own community. So thanks again to Gersón for letting us know what these pastors and church leaders are doing in Guatemala. And Ron, would you mind praying us out?
Sure. Gracias, Gersón, de nuevo por participar en la conversación y por darnos un informe de lo que los pastores están haciendo en Guatemala. Que Dios les bendiga. Voy a orar para terminar. God, we love you. We thank you so much for who you are. And we're just, once again, humbled and inspired to hear about what pastors in Guatemala are doing even at this moment. That great sacrifice. We know these pastors live on $30, $40, $50 a month. That's their offerings. And we know that their church members are equally as under-resourced. And yet to see the level of passion to realize that in this moment of crisis, what it means for them to be a church is to be in the community, is to be working with communities, is to be reaching out to these families, to be focused really on mission entirely, and see that comes at a great cost to them, both personally and even as a church. They're giving of their limited resources to care for these families in incredible ways. They're not sitting back waiting for donations to come and waiting for someone else, a third party, to come and see how they can rescue them. Rather, they're out there already, even pushing mayors' offices to double check the list and make sure that no one's falling through the cracks. And it's just inspiring to me, God, to see that that's who your church is. And that's what these amazing pastors and church leaders and community leaders are doing in Guatemala. And I just pray right now that you'll continue to give them energy, give them creativity. Don't let them get frustrated when things don't go their way, when they're taking 2 steps sideways or 1 step backward instead of going forward. Lord, I pray that you keep them in the game focused in ways that are open up new ways even for them to work with the church communities. Let the mayor's offices respond, the federal programs respond. Let NGOs, everybody be able to respond to what these church and communities are doing on the ground as they identify the families and as they care for them. And once again, I just thank you for Gersón, his 7 years of dedication to Enlace and to the pastors, as you heard him say, just his passion for churches and to see them connect and to serve their communities, transform their communities. And I thank you for him and his family. I pray that you'll be with his wife as the newborn is about to be born here. I pray that you'll be with her physically, that you would give her a peace, that even in the middle of this crisis and in crazy times, that she might be relaxed knowing that you are with them, that you will take care of them, that they will make it through this process in a healthy way, that she might recover quickly. I thank you for Gersón. I thank you for the rest of the staff. I thank you for all the people in the States that are already joining forces with Enlace and have been and are considering really how they can do more with relief in El Salvador, Guatemala. Lord, I just pray that you'll make us all courageous at this moment. We might not settle back and just think about what we need to do to protect ourselves, but that you might be able to push us all in, that we might be entirely in right now, God, to serve those that are most vulnerable in our communities, both locally in the States as well as internationally. I thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Awesome. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Muchas gracias por su tiempo, Gerson. Y
Claro.
Dios les bendiga. And God bless you all.
Bendiciones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Gracias, Gerson. Thank you,
Bueno,
Dave.
Okay.
cuídense.
Yes.